The Leech by Phillips Barbie. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Bologna Times. The Leech by Phillips Barbie. A visitor should be fed, but this one could eat you out of house and home. Literally. The leech was waiting for food. For millennia, it had been drifting across the vast emptiness of space. Without consciousness, it had spent the countless centuries in the void between the stars. It was unaware when it finally reached a sun. Life-giving radiation flared around the hard, dry spore. Gravitation tugged at it. A planet claimed it, with other stellar debris, and the leech fell, still dead-seeming, within its tough spore case. One speck of dust among many, the winds blew it around the earth, played with it, and let it fall. On the ground it began to stir. Nourishment soaked in, permeating the spore case. It grew and fed. Frank Connors came up on the porch and coughed twice. "Say, pardon me, Professor," he said. The long, pale man didn't stir from the sagging couch. His horn-rimmed glasses were perched on his forehead, and he was snoring very gently. "I'm awful sorry to disturb you," Connors said, pushing back his battered felt hat. "I know it's your resting week, and all, but there's something damn funny in the ditch." The pale man's left eyebrow twitched, but he showed no other sign of having heard. Frank Connors coughed again, holding his spade in one purple-veined hand. "Did you hear me, Professor?" "Of course I heard you," Michaels said in a muffled voice, his eyes still closed. "You found a pixie." "A what?" Connors asked, squinting at Michaels. "A little man in a green suit. Feed him milk, Connors." "No, sir. I think it's a rock." Michaels opened one eye and focused it in Connors' general direction. "I'm awfully sorry about it," Connors said. Professor Michaels' resting week was a 10-year-old custom, and his only eccentricity. All winter, Michaels taught anthropology, worked on half a dozen committees, dabbled in physics and chemistry, and still found time to write a book a year. When summer came, he was tired. Arriving at his worked-out New York State farm, it was his invariable rule to do absolutely nothing for a week. He hired Frank Connors to cook for that week, and generally make himself useful, while Professor Michaels slept. During the second week, Michaels would wander around, look at the trees, and fish. By the third week, he would be getting a tan, reading, repairing the sheds, and climbing mountains. At the end of 4 weeks, he could hardly wait to get back to the city. But the resting week was sacred. "I really wouldn't bother you for anything small," Connors said apologetically, "but that damn rock melted 2 inches off my spade." Michaels opened both eyes and sat up. Connors held out the spade. The rounded end was sheared cleanly off. Michaels swung himself off the couch and slipped his feet into battered moccasins. "Let's see this wonder," he said. The object was lying in the ditch at the end of the front lawn, 3 feet from the main road. It was round, about the size of a truck tire, and solid throughout. It was about an inch thick, as far as he could tell, grayish-black and intricately veined. "Don't touch it," Connors warned. "I'm not going to. Let me have your spade." Michaels took the spade and prodded the object experimentally. It was completely unyielding. He held the spade to the surface for a moment, then withdrew it. Another inch was gone. Michaels frowned and pushed his glasses tighter against his nose. He held the spade against the rock with one hand, the other held close to the surface. More of the spade disappeared. doesn't seem to be generating heat," he said to Connors. "Did you notice any the first time?" Connor shook his head. Michaels picked up a clod of dirt and tossed it on the object. The dirt dissolved quickly, leaving no trace on the gray-black surface. A large stone followed the dirt and disappeared in the same way. "Isn't that just about the damnedest thing you ever saw, Professor?" Connors asked. "Yes," Michaels agreed, standing up again. "It just about is." He hefted the spade and brought it down smartly on the object. When it hit, he almost dropped the spade. He had been gripping the handle rigidly, braced for a recoil, but the spade struck that unyielding surface and stayed. There was no perceptible give, but absolutely no recoil. "Whatcha think it is?" Connors asked. "It's no stone," Michaels said. He stepped back. "A leech drinks blood. This thing seems to be drinking dirt. And spades." He struck it a few more times, experimentally. The two men looked at each other. On the road, half a dozen army trucks rolled past. "I'm going to phone the college and ask a physics man about it," Michaels said. "Or a biologist. I'd like to get rid of that thing before it spoils my lawn." They walked back to the house. Everything fed the leech. The wind added its modicum of kinetic energy, ruffling across the gray-black surface. Rain fell, and the force of each individual drop added to its store. The water was sucked in by the all-absorbing surface. The sunlight above it was absorbed, and converted into mass for its body. Beneath it, the soil was consumed. Dirt, stones, and branches broken down by the leech's complex cells and changed into energy. Energy was converted back into mass, and the leech grew. Slowly, the first flickers of consciousness began to return. Its first realization was of the impossible smallness of its body. It grew. When Michaels looked the next day, the leech was 8 feet across, sticking out into the road and up the side of the lawn. The following day it was almost 18 feet in diameter, shaped to fit the contour of the ditch, and covering most of the road. That day the sheriff drove up in his Model A, followed by half the town. "Is that your leech thing, Professor Michaels?" Sheriff Flynn asked. "That's it," Michaels said. He had spent the past days looking unsuccessfully for an acid that would dissolve the leech. "We gotta get it out of the road," Flynn said, walking truculently up to the leech. "Something like this. You can't let it block the road, Professor. The Army's gotta use this road." "I'm terribly sorry," Michaels said with a straight face. "Go right ahead, Sheriff. But be careful. It's hot." The leech wasn't hot, but it seemed the simplest explanation under the circumstances. Michaels watched with interest as the sheriff tried to shove a crowbar under it. He smiled to himself when it was removed with half a foot of its length gone. The sheriff wasn't so easily discouraged. He had come prepared for a stubborn piece of rock. He went to the rumble seat of his car and took out a blowtorch and a sledgehammer, ignited the torch, and focused it on one edge of the leech. After 5 minutes there was no change. The gray didn't turn red or even seem to heat up. Sheriff Flynn continued to bake it for 15 minutes, then called to one of the men. "Hit that spot with the sledge, Jerry." Jerry picked up the sledgehammer, motioned the sheriff back, and swung it over his head. He let out a howl as the hammer struck unyieldingly. There wasn't a fraction of recoil. In the distance they heard the roar of an army convoy. "Now we'll get some action," Flynn said. Michaels wasn't so sure. He walked around the periphery of the leech, asking himself what kind of substance would react that way. The answer was easy. No substance. No known substance. The driver in the lead jeep held up his hand, and the long convoy ground to a halt. A hard